Okay, it is Wednesday, April 20th here on the Big Douglas Show. It is the last of our scouting notebook segments before the draft. And for that today, we brought from ESPN, Matt Bowen. Matt, thanks for doing this with us today.
Hey, thanks for having me on, guys.
No doubt. And I'm always excited to have my favorite younger brother with me here. Stuart took a little bit of time out. If this is Matt's biggest time of the year, Stuart, for those that don't know, you are a pastor at a church. What's bigger, Christmas or Easter? Like what is the Super Bowl here for not theologically, but just in terms of busy days?
Oh man, they are uniquely busy, both of them. That's hard to say, but I don't know. Since you're asking me, pushing me, maybe Easter.
Maybe Easter. Also, Matt played 3 years for Washington.
I did. Yeah, 2003 to my first year with Coach Spurrier, then 2 years with Coach Gibbs. Yes.
Interesting characters on that team.
Yeah, there was. Look, I had a great time in Washington. I had a great time. I have a ton of respect for Coach Spurrier. I know we didn't win a lot of football games. We as players need to take a lot of responsibility in that as well. And then when Coach Gibbs came in, just relationships on that football team, especially in the secondary, playing with guys like Fred Smoot, who's one of the best teammates you can have. Learning from Steve Jackson, my defensive back coach, and Steve actually was the defensive back coach in Cincinnati this past year. So you saw the impact he can have on a secondary, and obviously playing for Greg Williams. I learned so much from Greg. Stuff that I use now, I teach at the high school level or coach at the high school level here in Chicago at IC Catholic Prep. And I say a lot of the same things that Greg did in terms of the technique you use, the motivation you use with players, the schematic tendencies we used in Washington. Some of that is filtered down to the high school level. So I really loved it in Washington. Obviously, I wish we would have won more, but we did have the playoff year in 2005. Got knocked out by Seattle, who went on to win the Super Bowl. That was a really, really good football team.
Yeah, that's right. Well, hey, since we're talking about your past experience with the Redskins, you crossed over with Sean Taylor for 2 years, right?
I did.
Yeah.
Sean,
any memories for that?
One of the best football players I've ever seen. I mean, that was Sean. One of the best workers I've ever seen. We always look at the highlights on TV, and there, when they replay them of Sean, there's plenty of highlights, but his work ethic was amazing. It was amazing, and that speaks to his football character and how much he loved the game of football and the impact he had for us. You could see it during the first couple of practices in training camp. And that's back when we were in Virginia, in Ashburn, having 2 practices a day. That's how football used to be. You'd have 2 practices a day, and with Coach Gibbs and Coach Williams, it was 2 practices a day in pads now. Okay, and we had Coach Bugle on the offensive line, and those were physical, long sessions. And Sean was amazing. I mean, just he could do things on a football field that I could only dream of. I couldn't do that stuff. Just a tremendous football player, very smart football player, very tough, and obviously the playmaking element he brought to the position. We still haven't seen anything like it.
Let's double back. I want to get to the draft. Certainly, that's what we're here for. But Washington made a fairly big splash in free agency by making the trade for Carson Wentz. I have seen a lot of people say that they overspent or they bid against themselves. Let's not worry so much about what they spent, but more about upgrading what's the most important position on the field. I'm curious your thoughts on Carson Wentz and how he fits into what Washington really would like to do, because I haven't been able to do, I don't think, what Scott Turner's wants to do since they've been here.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I agree with your point. What the value was of the trade, it doesn't matter if he plays well for you, right? And that's the ultimate thing you're trying to do here. If he can be productive at the position, the value doesn't matter, because you're in a division you can compete and win this year. All right. You need an upgrade at the quarterback position. You need more consistent production at the quarterback position. Now, we know what Carson did in his last year in Philly. We know in Indianapolis last year, he had some games when he did play poor football, but he also made plays. You look at it and say, okay, he has the physical tools we want at the position. I think everyone understands that. He was drafted as a top 5 pick for a reason. That's because of the physical tools, the physical traits he has in terms of the size, the movement ability, the arm talent. He's a very aggressive thrower. And I think that's what we're getting to here. You talk about Scott Turner and what he wants to do offensively. They want to throw the deep end breakers. They want to challenge the third level defense. There's no question Carson can do that. I think for him to be at his best, he has to play more within the scheme. Okay, he has to take the throws that are available. He has to understand that his upper and lower body mechanics need to be tied tied together consistently so he doesn't miss the layup throws that are available. And when he has that opportunity to drive the ball to the third level, and I've said this before with Carson Wentz, and a lot of players like this who have those high-end physical tools, sometimes those physical tools play to your detriment. And what I mean by that, guys, is extending plays, taking riskier throws down the field because you know you have the arm talent to make the throw, but putting it into traffic. And that's where Carson has struggled the last couple of years in terms of ball security, taking too many sacks. When there are plays to be made in the field, you have to take those plays.
Where does he rank in the division for you now, as far as the 4 quarterbacks there go?
I still think Dak's at the top. I don't think anyone would argue that right now. And with Daniel Jones, we don't know. He's going into a new offense. What Daniel Jones has played so far has not been good enough. I think everyone would agree with that. But he's going into a new system with Brian Daboll in New York. I'm very interested to see how they scheme around him. And with Jalen Hurts in Philly, still a young quarterback, right? Still a very young quarterback. And their offense will continue to change. I think the wide receivers be more of an element in that passing game more consistently. I think there'll be more multiple pass game in Philadelphia and working to the second and the third level of the offense. But right now, it's Carson. You have to say, what Carson are you getting, right?
Right.
Is the Carson we saw earlier in his career in Philadelphia that was playing at MVP level was a Carson we saw that struggled at times for the last couple of seasons. But what you want him to be, let's just put it this way, what you want him to be is up there competing with Dak, right? Because if he's competing with Dak, you have a chance to win the division. Like I said before, this division, in my opinion, is winnable for Dallas, for Washington, and Philly. And you have to see what New York does with the new coaching staff.
My other concern is he available? He's long struggled with injuries throughout his career as well.
And we bring up a great point because availability really is the number one thing. It is the number one thing. There's a lot of talented players. Look, if you're in the NFL, in today's NFL, okay, if you're in today's NFL, especially the quarterback position, it's getting much more athletic. There's much more movement traits, but ultimately you still have to be able to throw from the pocket, right? That's what it's still going to come down to. Can you make the throws in critical game moments? And the critical game moments for me are third downs and in the red zone. Those win games. If you're successful on third downs, you extend drives, you put the ball in scoring position. And if you score touchdowns, what I mean in the red zone, scoring touchdowns in the red zone, you'll win a lot of football games. And you bring up a good point with Carson. You have to be on the field to be in those situations. And that's been the story of a lot of people's careers, right? We've seen a lot of talented guys who cannot stay healthy and not be in a position to be available for the coaching staff and their teammates week to week.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Arguably, we've got a quarterback already in our past that was what marked him. RG3 couldn't stay healthy. So, well, hey, look, we're here to talk about the draft. What are you thinking about number 11 with the Commanders? What is likely coming down the pike for us?
Well, I think a lot of it depends on the quarterback position. Okay, if you look at mock drafts right now, really the quarterbacks are pushed back. I mean, there's a couple mocks that have them a little higher, but I always say there's 2 drafts every year. Okay, there's the NFL draft and there's a quarterback draft. And regardless of what you think about this class, okay, and this class based on college tape and based on traits is not as talented as last year's class. We would probably all agree with that. But it's still a quarterback-driven league. And there's still teams in the NFL who want to upgrade or put guys in position to develop that will be future starters in their systems. So Kenny Pickett, Malik Willis, Desmond Ridder, Matt Corral from Ole Miss. Where do these quarterbacks go? Because if you're Washington, you want 2 of them to go in the top 10. You want Pickett and Willis to come off the board in the top 10 because that's going to give you more options at number 11. That's going to force a player maybe like a Kyle Hamilton to go to 11. That could be a Garrett Wilson at 11. That could be Drake London if you're looking for a wide receiver at 11. That could be a corner at 11. I really think it's what you want in terms of building your football team. Now, I'm a big believer in Kyle Hamilton, what I've seen on tape. I know what he ran the 40, and I don't care because you look at the tape, and that tells you what his game speed is, right? How fast he sees, and especially at the safety position, guys. I played with safeties who would run mid 4.5s, low 4.6, and play extremely fast because they see it faster than everyone else. They can key and diagnose faster than everyone else. That gives them a jump on the football. Now, Kyle Hamilton is not a true center fielder. Okay, he's not a true post safety with center field range. He's more of a split safety coverage defender that can play top down with explosive forward ability. And I think in a place like Washington, you have to remember with Washington, they did not play a lot of base defense last year. I looked it up. I think they were 28th in percentage of base defense snaps last year. You know, whether it's a 3-4 or a 43, it doesn't matter. They did not have their base personnel with linebackers in the field. They're more of a sub-package team last year. We know what Landon Collins did for them last year as that overhang slot defender, that zone match player underneath. Kyle Hamilton can do that for you, and I think he's a more disruptive player. If you're looking at wide receivers, it's very interesting. Very interesting because the wide receiver rankings are all over the board. Now, on the NFL matchup show at ESPN, where I work with Sal Palantonio and Greg Cosell, we put out our top 3 yesterday and after the show, and it's a little different. We have George Pickens from Georgia at the top. Okay, then we have Jameson Williams. Then we have Garrett Wilson. You're going to talk to somebody else who's going to have Drake London at the top. Chris Olave at number 2. I think it's a really good wide receiver class. We're looking for another wide receiver to pair with Carson Wentz, to pair with Terry McLaurin, to pair with Logan Thomas if he's back, which I think is a key part of that offense. Curtis Samuel. We really didn't get a good view of what Curtis Samuel will be in this offense. You talk about availability, right? Well, Curtis Samuel was not in the field last year. I think Curtis Samuel has dynamic traits. Okay, someone who complements the traits of your other receiving targets. You could see that at number 11.
I completely agree with you on Pickens. Stuart won't be surprised about this. Matt, I got to explain this to you, right? So my grandparents retired to Athens, Georgia. We went there every year.
Okay.
We grew up in Georgia onesies. Stuart decided to go to Tennessee for school.
Okay.
He is a Vol now, and that made me angry. And so we argued. So Stuart knew that I thought but honestly, I do think Pickens is the best receiver in the class. And I'm with you on Jameson Williams as the second best. I think he's freaky. I watched him play Georgia enough to know exactly what he's capable of, and he'll wreck your defense quick, fast, and in a hurry. And it's amazing. And I'm curious your thoughts on this. But ACLs don't even seem like, it's easy for me to say, right, because I'm not getting the surgery and putting in the work. But that's not a detriment to players' careers anymore, it doesn't feel like.
No, it doesn't. Even back when I had an ACL in 04 with Washington, Sunday night game against Baltimore. And I tore it in November. I was back for minicamp. Now, obviously, I'm not a very explosive player, okay? I didn't have explosive traits. That's why Greg Williams hid me in the box the whole time, so I didn't have to cover anybody. But you can come back faster. Especially at skill positions, we're seeing him come back faster and still having that explosive element in that first year back in the field. And I'm with you on Jameson Williams. I think he's a game changer. Okay, and if I'm drafting a wide receiver, I want a game changer. For George Pickens, schematically, what you see in today's NFL, a lot of 3-by-1 sets, right? So you get trips to the field. Your boundary X receiver is critical in today's NFL because those are your isolation matchups. And those are where you can create isolation throws on third down. Those you create isolation throws inside the red zone. And look at someone like Mike Williams in LA and what they just paid to keep him. Mike Williams is the boundary X for LA and for Justin Herbert. So I think this is an extremely critical position. With Jameson Williams, he plays to the front side of trips. And you run crossers and overs all day. You make man covers try to run with him, and you allow Jameson to run away from man cover. Tremendous vertical ability down the field. Instant acceleration after the catch. It's one thing you notice in the Bama tape. You throw a slant, throw a shallow, you throw a deep sit route, and he can turn up the field and go. I think the route running traits are much better than he's given credit for. He's got detail to his route tree. And understand this about Bama. You watch Bama tape, they run routes that you see on Sundays. And that is an important thing because the transition to the NFL is extremely hard. Extremely hard. So it doesn't matter what position we're looking at, but do they have some pro elements, whether offensively or defensively, to allow a quicker transition to the field? Because I'll tell you right now, I was a rookie. I was drafted by the St. Louis Rams. My first training camp was against that offense. Okay, this is 2000. All right, this is a year after they won the Super Bowl. Kurt Warner's at quarterback. Orlando Pace in the O-line, Marshall Faulk, and that wide receiver had Isaac Bruce, Torrey Holt, Isaac Keeman, Ricky Paul. I've never seen anything that fast in my life, right? Never. I'm trying to find out where the landmark is from cover 2, and these guys are running right past me. Okay, so there is a transition period. So if you have that pro element schematically with you, that's going to help for an easier transition. That's why I think Jameson Williams and someone later in the draft, someone like a John Mitchie from Alabama, another player coming off knee, but his experience in the slot and running those pro route tree from the slot. Is
Pickens the best receiver right now, or is he your number one because he has the most talent out of everybody?
Oh, that's a great question. That's a great question because I'll tell you this right now. The best route runner I see right now is David Bell out of Purdue. Okay. And David Bell is a really good player, volume player in college. And he doesn't have the high-end testing numbers, though, right? He's not going to get drafted as high as Jameson Williams. But can he get open? Yeah, I think he can get open. And that's part of the package, right? That's what you have to do in the NFL. You might not have the same explosive 40 time or the sudden ability, but someone like David Bell is smooth, can work into the dirty areas of the field and get open. With Pickens, I think the traits are the best right now. The traits are the best. And I think when you're drafting in the first round, you're looking for those high-level traits of someone that can develop in a pro system, and you see tremendous upside. And that's what I see with Pickens.
Yeah.
When you're talking about, let's get back to 11 for a second. When you're talking about positional value, and the wide receiver class is so deep, for Washington, I mean, are you hoping that a Stingley Jr. falls, or like even one of the top tackles falls, or Hamilton, and then you get your wide receiver, say, in the second round?
That could very well happen. And with positional value, that includes Kyle Hamilton, because we're talking about a safety, right? And some people view safeties differently. Obviously, I am biased after playing the position and playing in a defense that utilizes safeties like that, as multi-dimensional players. So that comes down to what your coaching staff believes and your scouting department believes in terms of positional value for the safety. But if I'm Washington, and you bring up a good point, if one of the tackles, if Charles Cross is there from Mississippi State, that's hard to pass on.
Right.
Hard to pass on someone that can be a foundational piece of your offensive line, or Derek Stingley. And I'll tell you what, you turn on Stingley's freshman tape, you say this is the best corner in the class. You just do. Because he's got man coverage traits, he's got ball skills, he can motor mirror, he can match down the field and play the football. So that is a prime position we're talking about at cornerback. There's no question about it. In today's league, you got to have guys that can cover, and Stingley can do that. So that's a very interesting dynamic you bring up. And again, that goes back to what we're talking about. If those quarterbacks go extremely early, okay. Right. If we see Atlanta go for a quarterback, we see Carolina at 6, we see Detroit at number 2, which could happen. We don't know. See Detroit at number 2. A lot of players get pushed back.
Can I see if you have any insight or opinions on Alante Taylor and Cade Mays?
I haven't studied him enough yet. I have not.
It's okay.
Cade Mays is going to be one of those guys, like the guy that the Chiefs
Trey Smith.
picked up. Yeah, who's going to get drafted low, I think, and play really well. What are some of the receivers, Matt, that you see there in that second round? If Washington does end up going, it's just a lot of people have linebacker going because they still kind of only have 2 right now. But to your point, and I think it was Kime that put it on, 65 plays last year with 3 linebackers on the field. Yeah. So I think maybe the fan base feels like they need linebacker more than the team does. If they go Hamilton or Stingley or one of those guys in the first round, wide receiver and maybe even running back. They brought in a ton of running backs. That second round is the sweet spot for running backs, right?
I have said I brought in a bunch of running backs, but I'm a big believer in Gibson right now, what he does for that offense. I think you saw in his second year, Gibson, what he can do, much more patient runner, and using those traits. He's very sudden to get up the field, the short area speed, but it's really the patience, the understanding pro blocking in the second season, how talented he could be in this league. And you brought back your third down pass catcher. All right. So those are 2 key elements to that offense. I'd be surprised if they went running back, but again, this is the NFL draft. We don't exactly know. In terms of wide receivers in that second round range, and look, I could be totally off. These guys could go later, they can go earlier, but Jahan Dotson from Penn State is one. Okay. And what Dotson can do, explosive traits, body control, can vary speeds within the route stem. Not a guy, I talk about David Bell working the dirty areas of the field. For me, that's a high traffic areas of the field. Not a guy that's going to get a bunch of physical plays in the middle of the field, but in terms of what he can do in explosive traits and game-breaking traits and speed, someone to look for in that range. Christian Watson out of North Dakota State. Now, that would be interesting. Now, Christian Watson would be that boundary X in Washington. There's no question about that. He'd be the backside of 3-by-1. It's tremendous vertical speed down the field, can stretch defenses. I still think he's developing in terms of his route running traits, more of a linear route runner. But again, someone has a long frame, can make contested catches, be your isolation target. Now, Alec Pierce, I don't know, maybe later in the draft, but Alec Pierce out of Cincinnati. And Alec Pierce is from my hometown. He went to my high school at Glenbard West High School, played at Cincinnati. But Alec Pierce is someone to me, 6'3", 211, ran in the low 4.4s, plus 40 in the vertical jump. I think he's got straight line speed, tremendous play strength, and again, someone that could be that boundary X for you on the backside. Sky Moore out of Western Michigan, The Sky Moore of Western Michigan is very interesting to me because of what he's going to be in terms of his NFL fit. A lot of RPOs, run pass options, very heavy RPO offense at Western Michigan, caught a lot of in breakers. Okay, extremely tough in the middle of the field. To me, at times, he's a one-speed route runner, but he did run the low 4.4s. We've seen him stretch defenses on his college tape down the field, but someone that can play inside the numbers in Washington.
Best guess, how many quarterbacks do you think end up going first round? Because there's always a couple that sneak in there, even though teams don't want to do it. They talk themselves in every year to drafting quarterback in the first round.
Right now, I'm going to say 4. I think it's Pickett, Willis, Desmond Ridder, and Corral. I think they're all in that range. I think more when you get to day 2, then you see guys like Sam Howell and Carson Strong on day 2. But I think there will be 4 in the first round. I could be totally wrong, but I do think there will be 4 because of the demand for the position and the traits these young quarterbacks have. You look at someone like Desmond Ridder, extremely poised and composed in the pocket. You put him in an NFL system with play action elements where he can attack the edges on boots, throw with rhythm and timing off play action. I think he will be a quality starter in this league. There's no question about it. Willis is interesting to me because we know I call him a high traits prospect because he has the arm talent to attack all 3 levels of the field. He's got dual threat ability. He can make plays, second reaction, and you can scheme him as a runner because he plays with a physical element at the position. You have to look at the college offense for all these prospects. Remember we talked about the Jameson Williams at Alabama, what they were asked to do. And based on what Malik Willis was asked to run and execute at Liberty, there's going to be a transition period. He's going from a college-based offense to a pro offense. There's going to be more full field passing concepts, more multiple progression reads. And there will be a transition period, but he has the traits, if I'm a coach, that I can't teach, right? He has what I call uncoachable traits.
Right.
Okay. And that's what makes him, in terms of a higher ceiling prospect or an upside prospect, someone you want in your system so you can get him under pro coaching, teach him your system, include the quarterback run game early in his career, and develop him as a pocket throw because he has the traits to do it. The same with Matt Corral. You look at Matt Corral's office at Ole Miss, a lot of RPOs, a lot of plays that were designed by the play concept where the ball is supposed to go, right? So again, in the pros, when those first 2 reads aren't open, different than his Ole Miss offense, he's been working more to the backside, getting the 3 and getting the 4. Again, a growth process for him, but he's got a quick, compact release, extremely competitive and tough. Extremely competitive and tough. You saw that as Ole Miss tape as a ball carrier. Now, I think he will change his running style in the NFL. I think every quarterback learns that. But again, another quarterback that can make plays for you outside as a runner and a thrower.
2 more before we let you run out of here, and I really appreciate you doing this today. But how many games do you usually watch on a guy
That's a great question.
In the process?
Greg Cosell and I just had this discussion yesterday. I was out at the NFL Films office after we shot the show, and it depends. With our system at NFL Films, we can pull up any player and watch any play. If you want to watch Kenny Pickett's all of his 3rd and 8+ throws, right? You can pull them all, come all right up the screen. But you do have to watch games too. One to see how they're deployed and utilized, especially for defensive players. You're talking about safety. Well, I want to see where Kyle Hamilton lines up. He might line up differently against Florida State than he did against Cincinnati. And I want to see that because I want to know what coaches, how they game plan for the player. So usually for players, for me, I watch 3 games. All right, that's usually 3 games I watch. And then for a defensive player, I watch all their plays. I call them point of attack plays. Or I could type in their name, it'll give me all the plays they made all season. And that will give you a better feel, too, for their movement traits and the athletic traits you want to see based on a certain position.
We are 8 days from the NFL draft. What is your best guess for 11 and 47 for Washington?
Oh, man. Okay, so I'm going to be totally wrong, right? You guys know this, right? Okay.
Absolutely.
But 11, I'm going to go Kyle Hamilton. Okay, I think it's going to be Kyle Hamilton based on where I projected quarterbacks to go. But again, Kyle Hamilton go later. We might see him go earlier. In the second round, well, we got to go wide receiver then. The second round at 47, I'm going to go Christian Watson.
Okay.
North Dakota State. Just because I look at that offense right now, what they have with McLaurin, with Samuel, with Logan Thomas, what they have in the backfield. I know you guys drafted Brown last year who has explosive vertical ability down the field. But in terms of a true boundary X receiver, with a ton of upside that you can develop in your system, and knowing Scott Turner and knowing that they want to be aggressive throwing the football, and knowing you have a quarterback that, let's be honest, who wants to throw the ball to the 3rd level, that would be a good fit.
And that's because you assume Pickens goes in the first round.
I do assume he goes the first round. Now, if he's there, that would be, a great pick. I think Pickens is much higher. There's always players that have those type of traits go higher, just like the cornerback position. I think you'll see that this year too. Corners who have length, ball skills, and speed to match and carry down the field. Long corners get drafted higher. Okay, we always see it at the end of the first round. Corners start to sneak in the back end of the first round because every team wants corners that can challenge wide receivers at the line of scrimmage.
And as they've gotten paid more, you're going to have to start drafting receiver higher and more often because you can't afford to pay multiple wide receivers $25 million. That's what the good ones are going for.
No, you can't. And that brings up a great point about the wide receiver position right now, because I'll tell you what, for myself, coaching at the lower level, at the high school level, much different than when I played. Wide receivers are much more advanced now, and it starts early. It starts in junior high, right? It starts at junior high.
Because of the 7-on-7, right?
Playing 7-on-7, more detailed summer camps at the high school level. You're practicing more. You're on the field more. And the way high school offenses operate now, there's more spread offenses. There's more trips to the field. There's more empty. There's more vertical throws. There's more run and catch and run opportunities. Now, I was in high school, we're running split back veer. Okay, it's much different, right, than the mid-'90s at Lombard West. So my point is, I don't think this is going to stop in terms of having deep wide receiver year after year. And it starts to bring up is that when a wide receiver wants to get paid the big-time money, there's going to be options to supplement that production coming out of the draft.
The plan is always to get smarter on Wednesdays. We achieved that today. Matt, thank you so much for doing this. Had a blast.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Thank you very much.